Okay, we're live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Committee on Community Development, Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. Councilmember Farrelletto. Councilmember Rivera.
Present.
Councilmember Scanlon is present. Councilmember Wyatt.
Here.
Council President Pridgen.
Here.
Councilmember Bowman.
Present.
Councilmember Nowakowski.
Present.
Quorum is present.
Okay, from the top.
Item number 1, request Buffalo Sewer Authority to discuss constituent concerns.
Items open.
This item is open. Is Councilmember Golombek on?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm here, present.
Okay. Did you want the first item, Councilmember, is regarding the Buffalo Sewer Authority item?
Yes, I believe we have a representative here from them.
Yes, Mr. Wyatt, we've been joined by O.J. McFoy representing Buffalo Sewer.
How you doing, Councilmember?
Okay, Mr. McFoy, you got the letter from the council member. Do you want to just speak to it?
I did, and I'm reading it here, and it said to discuss constituent concerns regarding sewer repairs and maintenance, and I'm not quite certain of what we're referring to. But if we're talking about the home serve program, is that correct, Mr. Golombek?
Yeah, it's the insurance program.
Yes. Okay, that's what I thought. I just didn't know by the wording. So one of the concerns that you and I have discussed was, first of all, the benefits of this program that we have kind of been running for the past 10 years here in our city. And then, some of the nuances here. And one of the nuances that came up, which is something that no constituent can know until the ground is kind of unearthed, is what we call shared services. Now, those are not allowed throughout the city, but there were occasions in our city's lifespan where shared services, whether that was a shared line for a water service line or a private water sewer or sewer line. And the program that we have as such does not cover those concerns, but it covers many of the other things. I could share my screen, but if you go to our buffalowater.org, you can see the program benefits. And when we kind of rolled that out, we wanted to make sure that it was a good benefit to everybody in the city. Because when you look at the unknown repairs that may come from having to address your private sewer line or your private water line, those can become very expensive to the tune of $9,000-$10,000 at a time. So the programs that we have for waterline are $6.99 a month, and for sewer it's $11.99, and that works through our partner Veolia, who actually has the relationship with HomeServe. So we traditionally send out a letter, and they'll come out periodically where it'll be a cover letter from myself, and then it'll have the kind of the program guidelines, and just so that people understand. Many people don't understand that they are responsible as homeowners for their private water line as well as their private sewer lateral.
Any other comments, Councilmember Golombek?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank OJ for showing up, and I appreciate the work that he does over with BSA. Whenever I've had to get in touch with him when there's been an issue, I appreciate his response and always his attempts to try to help residents in the North District, and I'm sure the entire city of Buffalo. That being said, I have always been a supporter of the residents, getting this insurance. I think that, having insurance, hopefully never having to use it, but having the insurance is a very, very wise thing just in case. That being said, I do have some questions about, the fine print, if you will, and about the problems where you have people that are paying for their insurance and it has like the double it goes to the two houses. It's a shared service, if you will. I'm just curious, how come we don't know if they have a shared service when they buy the insurance?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we wouldn't know. We don't traditionally track that because they are private laterals and private service lines. So when your home was built, whether that was in 1920 or in the 50s, there had a record. And on the water side, we have what's known as tap cards, where we initially wrote down, the type of material, the size of the material going into your homes. But many areas of our city were put in, beyond that. So we only have the initial, but we don't have any changes. And like over time, things were buried. So our records don't reflect if there are dual connections. We do note that is illegal, and that is kind of called out in what you may say some of the fine print that you agree to upon entering into that relationship with HomeServe, that you do not have that type of a connection. But it's one of those things you won't know until you go and dig.
Okay, and then what do residents have as a recourse at that point? Does the insurance pay for partial work, or are they on their own at that point, or is it different with every situation?
I'd have to ask that specifically on that. I believe because it is a provision when you sign the agreement that you indicate that you do not have that type of a shared service. I believe it falls back on the homeowner. I know there are provisions for in the contract for rebates, and also to be able to separate out the contract. But I believe the way that works is that is going to be on the property owner.
Okay. Yeah, if you could check into that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And, once again, I think that it's a very, very good program. But I think that this is one of the kinks that I would like to see ironed out because, needless to say, when somebody needs the insurance, and they contact them, it's during a crisis. Your house is being flooded, your basement's being flooded. And, whenever I run into these situations with constituents, it's exceptionally frustrating because then they're told, oh, well, gee, basically they interpret it as, oh, well, you paid your insurance for the past 5-10 years for nothing. And I know that that's not the case, but that's, the feeling that these people have during a mini crisis in their life. So yeah, if you could get me that information and, once we know that, I'd like to maybe put together a private meeting. I think Mr. Bowman had expressed an interest. He had some concerns and questions about the program as well. That maybe we could tighten up some of these loopholes some way to help out our residents. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem, council member. I'll make sure to get back in touch with you. I will appreciate and apologize to you guys for the kind of informal dress. I didn't know I was going to be on prime time with you guys there. So I do appreciate the time to speak.
No problem, OJ. You're excused. Okay, motion to table.
Motion to table.
Seconded by Councilmember Scanlon.
Item number 2, concerns regarding 2868 Main.
Items open.
This item is open, and I see we have Mr. Reese on the line to speak on the Zoom call. Mr. Reese? You're muted.
I am attempting to.
You're good.
You hear me? I think I just unmuted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, fine. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk. We've got a situation here where I think we've got a war that we didn't ask for here in Central Park. I want to do a little background on this. If you're not familiar with the Central Park neighborhood in Buffalo, it was laid out in May of 1892 by Lewis J. Bennett himself. We feel it's the finest residential area in Erie County or Western New York. About 470 single-family residential units primarily, with deed restrictions which specify single-family residential dwellings. It was designed as, in Bennett's name, an area for first-class residential housing right from the start. We have a coffee table book, which I'm holding up here, which you can get in the Historical Society. It says Central Park, Buffalo, New York, a neighborhood of history and tradition. We love the place. My wife and I have lived here for 43 years. We have aggressively, via housing court and via litigation, attempted to enforce our deed restrictions, keep the area the way it was. And we make sure that people keep their property up here. By the same token, this isn't just an area for snooty rich folk. There are 3 churches, one predominantly black church and a mosque in this neighborhood. It's a well-integrated community. It's a friendly community. We've got one of the finest pocket parks in the area. That's Burke's Green. Routinely, homeless people utilize that park and they are welcome there. Okay, this is a nice, friendly neighborhood. There's lots of BLM signs in our neighborhood. We had a property which we referred to as 2866 Main Street, which we had in housing court for years. It was a single-family residential dwelling, essentially, that was on a double lot at the corner of Woodbridge and Main. The building was used for a long time as a residence, and then someone opened an insurance office in the first floor, but it continued to be a residential dwelling, and essentially a residential dwelling. It was abandoned as an insurance office. It appears that some sort of real estate speculator purchased it, and it fell apart. And we made dozens of housing court appearances. I mean, I can't even count how many we made. Eventually, the building was effectively falling apart. There were squatters living in it. And, you know, somehow or other, and it wasn't really clear how this was done. It came into the possession of the land bank. Once it came into the possession of the land bank, the homeowners association, Central Park Homeowners Association, which has been very active through the years, and which has sponsored the litigation and the housing court appearances, et cetera, became aware of this and contacted the land bank. We made sure that the land bank was aware of our deed restrictions, was aware of our concerns. We wanted this parcel developed as 2 single-family residential houses. The deed restrictions were made available to them. They obviously had them because they put it in their purchase offer. And we were trying to get a meeting with them. That activity was like, say, summer and fall of last year. So we're still waiting for a meeting with the land bank. Sometime in May of this year, in the middle of COVID, Joel Jambra himself contacted me and said he's developing a property. He owns it on the corner. And I said, that's nice. When you want to come up with your 2 single-family residential development plans, come and see us. We'll talk to you. And he said, oh, no, it's not going to be single-family residential. He wouldn't tell me what he was trying to put up, but apparently he wants to put up 6 townhouses. We don't think that's a good idea. We think it violates our deed restrictions, et cetera. So anyhow, I contacted the land bank and spoke to the executive director, asked who the FOIL records access officer was. I was told they didn't have one. I informed them that they had to have one because they were a public body. And the response was, well, we're a very small office, to which I pretty much said, thank you very much. We FOILed the executive director and Mr. Mahaffey, who is the chairman of the board. We've received the numerous documents in response to the FOIL. My wife actually does the FOIL. There's a reason for that. I litigate. It's easier if she FOILs it, and I'm her attorney. But I want to bring your attention to some documents that were produced with this and things that happened along the way. I hope you have them. There is a resolution which is dated October 11th, 2018. It's from Brendan Mahaffey, and it talks about the National Community Stabilization Trust. And basically it says that the NCST is going to donate these properties There were two parcels there, 2868 and 2866. And they passed this resolution saying, well, we're going to accept this donation from NCST. Well, I called up NCST and quite frankly gave them a piece of my mind and said, what are you doing? You've caused some problems here. Now I got somebody who's going to develop property which in a manner inconsistent with nature and character of our area. By the way, the actual purchaser of the property is Nicholas Jambra. It is not Joel Jambra. And he immediately, he's a realtor. He bought it for $150,000 and he immediately made it available for sale at $295,000. So his first act was to attempt to flip the property. Well, we learn now or have learned more about Benlick than anyone ever really wanted to know. Anyhow, I contacted NCST. I spoke to the president, who was a very nice lady, and she said, Mr. Reed, calm down a little bit. I'll explain to you what really happened here because you have the wrong idea. And I did have the wrong idea because it was the idea which I got from the proceedings of Benlick. And if you look at another document, there is a housingwire.com article about NationStar, AKA Mr. Cooper. And basically what this entity is a bad boy mortgage servicer that got in trouble with 3 states and had to put out some money, 17 million to New York State and donate $5 million worth of property. Apparently this came from NationStar, the bad boys. It didn't come from the NCST. NCST only operates as a broker, as it were, putting people together. So thank you to Julia Gordon, who was the president, and I really appreciate the information she gave us. All right, well, we then looked, you know, so number one, this resolution is like crazy world. Well, we then looked at the rules under which the land bank is supposed to operate. And you have, I hope, a property purchase application from Nicholas Jambra. If you look at the second page of this, you will see that under Benlick's rules, about, well, it's the second paragraph from the bottom on the second page. If a property is vacant and adjoins existing structure, it is, if it was vacant when this property was transferred, the adjacent owner happens to be a Buffalo City Court judge, and on the other side of this property is a Buffalo police captain, is the owner. The applicant must submit a redevelopment plan describing proposed use of land, etc. And it apparently it has to show some sort of fiscal responsibility. If you then flip another couple of pages, we then sought in vain a plan for redevelopment with some indication of fiscal responsibility. And if you look at a page which is titled Description of Applicant's Experience, the last paragraph, apparently signed by Mr. Jambra, says the plan is to purchase the property as an individual and assemble a team of professional, that's his sick, not mine, to create and construct a buildings that is most suitable for this lot with current zoning and existing deed restrictions. Okay, well, the plan is to make a plan. It's an acknowledgement that there was no plan. So first off, they didn't have a plan. Benlick violated its own rules. They sold this property without a plan. But it gets worse because the deed that they deeded out subsequent to this was a warranty deed with no reverter clause in it. Because there's no reverter clause, maybe you could make out that Nicholas Jambra has some sort of contract with Benlick here to come up with a plan in a year. I'm not really sure if you can make that out, but maybe a court would believe that. However, there's no reverter clause in the deed. So if Mr. Jambra sells his property this afternoon to someone who has no notice of this, the property's gone, and that can't be enforced against anybody. So what we have on our hands here is a mess. There are some other minor things here. If you look in their minutes, which you should have available, third page of their meeting. This is Benlick's meeting of December 19th of 2019. The third page is the resolution by which they devolved this property. They basically indicate, and this is the first time we knew about it, they put the two parcels together into one. Well, these are two single-family residential parcels that faced Main Street. Now it's a single parcel. And that is not facilitating development of two residential structures. In fact, what we in the neighborhood would have liked to have seen is a recut of that property as two residential properties on Woodbridge, which would probably enhance the marketability of the property. And in fact, we found a builder who was willing to talk to Mr. Jambra about developing two single-family residential structures, and the builder was essentially rebuffed. So now we essentially have a mess here where we're going to get something in our neighborhood that we didn't want, a neighborhood that's been around for a long, long time. And we've got a fight on our hands. There's probably going to be litigation and other nonsense, and this wasn't necessary. Now, I sat through part of the previous meeting. I can't open a deli in Buffalo, okay, without some interface and some interaction with the Common Council. But somehow or other, without our knowledge or your knowledge, this all happened and transpired. I'm not really sure what the solution is. I think the enabling legislation is a good idea. The primary intent is to put these zombie properties back onto the market into productive use of some manner form. It even permits the properties to be used as a public park, which would have been fine with us. But what we'd really like is two single-family residential dwellings, and the settlement agreement by which this property came into Benlick's hands is supposed to, and I quote here, to help low and moderate income families find affordable housing. Well, how did any of this help low and moderate income families
Okay.
obtain housing?
Mr. Reese, thanks for your detailed presentation. Hold on. Do we have Mr. Mahaffey on?
No, I am Jocelyn Gordon. I'm the executive director of Benlick, our city and county land bank. So
Okay.
I would be here to speak basically on behalf of Mr. Mahaffey, who is our board chair.
Okay, go right ahead.
Geez, I'm not quite sure even where to begin, but I'll try to be very brief and concise. Benlick is one of 25 land banks in New York State. We've essentially been in existence since approximately 2012. We've been active in Buffalo and Erie County since 2014. And we've dealt with approximately 150 properties during that time, both in the city of Buffalo and throughout Erie County. I think it's also important that our land bank is not an arm of the city of Buffalo. We are a public authority. We are a not-for-profit, and the city of Buffalo and representatives from Erie County make up our board of directors. So we are separate from the city of Buffalo. So just some brief background on that property at Main Street. Mr. Reese is totally correct. We received that property as a donation from Nation Star Mr. Cooper. As our land bank, we deal with vacancy, we deal with abandoned properties, and we try to get properties back into productive use. This property, as he mentioned, was in and out of housing court, a major nuisance property, and it was a very unique donation, an opportunity for Benlick to take in a property that's in a very strong market neighborhood, which it is, and as Mr. Reese talks about, we work typically in more difficult neighborhoods. We work and do rehabs and new construction and work with Habitat for Humanity and other not-for-profits. We work in the Delavan Grider neighborhood. We work in Riverside. We work in Lovejoy. I know Councilmember Golombek knows that we're building 2 brand new houses on Crowley Street in Riverside. So the opportunity for us to take a donation property and to sell it at its most marketable, and then use that money to fulfill our mission in other neighborhoods is basically the philosophy we put in place when we received this very unique donation of a property, in the Central Park neighborhood. So that's really key, was that this doesn't happen often. We received it. We knew we would get a good amount for it, and we would put it directly to work in the neighborhoods that need the help. So that's the philosophy behind what we did with that property. And last year, when we received the property, one of the first things we did was find some commercial brokers and residential real estate brokers to walk through it with us. We walked through the property and said, what's the highest and best use? What would make this property the most marketable or desirable? And essentially the broker said a vacant lot would be the most marketable opportunity, and the property was in very distressed and abandoned condition. So right around that time, which was August, September of 2019, we started cooperating and doing some back and forth emails with the Central Park Homeowners Association, who let us know about the deed restrictions. So now we've got a green code in place that took a long time for the city to pass, and we know what the highest and best use is for that land based on the green code, and we've got deed restrictions. So instead of working with a commercial broker to market the property, we pulled back and we said, okay, we're going to sell this in-house. We put together a request for offers and sent that out to a group of brokers, also kept Councilmember Farrelletto involved and sent him a copy of the request for offers. And we included those deed restrictions right in the package along with that request for offer. So the most important thing for our board of directors with this property sale was that we sell the property with respect to, this is a strong market, the market can take care of itself. We need to respect the green code, and we need to respect the deed restrictions. Legally, you don't have to let anybody know about deed restrictions. We wanted to make sure, here are the restrictions, here's the zoning. Now, bring us your offers, and we'll review the offers. And the offer that was approved specifically said in his letter that he would respect the deed restrictions, that he would respect the green code, and he had the finances to purchase the property. We also kept the property on the market longer than necessary. Our board meets once a month. Mr. Giambra came to the table in November of 2019, and our board tabled the decision just to see if there were more competitive offers, who else would come in. But it wasn't our board's job to be prescriptive about the sale. The board's job was to determine that the that the buyer would respect the green code, which they said they would, and that they would respect the deed restrictions, which they said they would. And we sold the property, and we are now making use of that money in neighborhoods where we can do and fulfill our mission in a better way.
So if they don't respect the deed restrictions and those things, what is the recourse?
I don't know if that's our land bank's responsibility. But I'm open. We did sell. We sold it because the offerer and that buyer has purchased a property from our land bank in the past and did an incredible job rehabbing that property, putting it back on the market and selling it. And and the track record was excellent.
I guess that's where the problem lies, is that you sold a property that had deed restrictions, but if they don't follow the deed restrictions, what's the recourse? Councilmember Scanlon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question directed to you, but it's actually for Jocelyn. Jocelyn, with regards to what the chairman's saying, in the contract for sale, is that in there that they're going to meet all those restrictions?
It's in the letter of the offer package. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to even dip my foot. I don't want to put my foot and say the wrong thing here.
Okay, ultimately my question is there some sort of contract that exists where they're supposed to adhere to that?
I would have to defer and make sure, Mr. Scanlon.
Okay, thank you.
So right now, for Mr. Reese and that community, it's only good faith if this person who owns the property is going to adhere to the deed restrictions and those things. And so I guess that may be something that Ben Lick has to look at. How do we legislate to make certain that if that is handed off, that someone is not able to violate the restrictions, because that just wouldn't make a lot of sense. If it's there because the community made sure it was there to protect their interests, and then all of a sudden you sell it and that goes away, that just doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. And maybe we need to have Mr. Mahaffey involved in this conversation on what things we can do to make sure that that doesn't happen. It doesn't help Mr. Reese right now, but we're hoping that the owner would be responsive to those deed restrictions. We would hope. But you're saying he's building townhouses. That doesn't seem like he's that interested in following the deed restrictions.
Yeah, I think it's important also that the buyer hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I may respond, their rules require a plan. This is a joke. If what's in this letter of intent here, his Mr. Jambra's purchase application, the one paragraph here, it is not a plan. It is a plan to make a plan. And he made it very clear. His intent was to flip the property. He's going to double his money and run. Okay. A community, and there's an old joke. Who never benefits from a community benefit corporation? You know, the community or public benefit corporation, the public. This is, I have never seen anything this loose or sloppy in a government entity, a dealing or a contract with a government entity anywhere. And anyone who wants to call this a plan, I mean, that's just nonsense. It's not a plan. It's an acknowledgement that they have no plan. And quite frankly, what Benlick decided to do was take the money and run.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. What else did they do here?
Yeah. Mr. Reese, because we have our corporation counsel on, Mr. McDuffie, and see if he can add some enlightenment to what we can do with this situation. You're muted, sir.
Good afternoon, all. I have been diligently listening to the conversation. I think that in terms of the property itself, I am keenly aware of the property that Mr. Reese pointed out on Main Street, because from the housing court end, I was involved in assisting with the request for an abandonment property proceeding on that one. The tough part for us was there are properties that we know that we can go after and that we are looking to go after, but they sometimes have a nuance that puts us in a difficult place. That particular one, I think that there was a layer where there was a mortgage on it. In addition to there being a mortgage, I think that we were able to demonstrate that because there was a mortgage, the taxes and insurance were being paid. And from our standpoint, if the taxes are being paid, there's a possibility that we can't do an abandonment proceeding that's viable because it requires there being no taxes paid. It requires there being a vacancy for a certain period of time. And we were quite successful on the vacancy side, but not on the tax side. So I know to his question, how did it arrive sort of with Ms. Gordon and her team over at the land bank? I think that they diligently worked towards that, but they were able to get a push from our end and say, we have it on our radar from the Buffalo Housing Court angle. We're looking to try to find a viable way to get it from the abandoned property side, but it's very much something that we're carefully continuing to look at. To the additional question about how do we address things that are in a deed that are, right, restrictions that are not followed. And I think that is where I see the council president has joined as well. I think that is where you may have to lawyer up and take certain things to court. There's usually two processes. Either you do things by agreement, right, which is what I talk to some of our clients about. You're in a good space by agreement because it gives you more control. But the reality is not everybody wants to play nicely with the city of Buffalo. Not everybody wants to play nicely during a project. And sometimes you find yourself in a place where you will in fact have to take certain aspects of this to a courtroom. What I will be doing, because I am not counsel to the council, I am sitting in today for your council. I'll be taking these concerns back to Karen Gordon, and I'm sure she will take them to Corporation Counsel so that he can provide you with an official position from the department. But just on the practical side, if we can't get them to enter into some agreement that we think is important and probably binding, right? I don't think we want a verbal on this one. I think we want to be able to demonstrate that they've come before this honorable body, that they have certainly signed off in a way that they can be bound and the city can be bound. Then we may find ourselves in litigation land, and none of us want to be there, but sometimes disputes are resolved in that way. Okay, so I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. So, Mr. Reese, I know that doesn't answer the question, but it gives you some guidance. And if it's okay with the chairman, if you want to have some further conversation with the owner to see if you can negotiate something to work it out where it's a legal document, I would ask that you would do that, but then we can leave it in this committee and you can come back to us in a couple of weeks, or maybe if it's up to Mr. Ricolumbeck, to come back and follow up with us to see where we are with that to make certain that hopefully we can have something going forward. I know Ms. Gordon is out ill right now, so she may not be back within 2 weeks, but at least if you can start having some preliminary conversation with the owner, maybe you can move it in that direction to get something in writing, because I agree with the counselor, you need something in writing. Councilmember Klumbeck?
Yeah, I'm fine with keeping, thank you. I'm fine with keeping this in committee so that we have a talking point and, you know, getting an answer from the law department in regards to the problem with the pact, the covenant pact that's on that property.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Peter Reese again.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to finish by saying we didn't come, looking for a fight here. And I'm not the brightest person in the world or the best connected person in the world. And yet I've found a builder who is willing to look at building 2 single-family residential dwellings here that comply with our deed restrictions. I do not understand how Benlick, which quite frankly is loaded with government officials, that's all it is, between County Executive Poloncarz and Mayor Brown, they control and they effectively own Benlick. All right, that's the board of directors. I do not understand how this happened. With all of the people who are involved with this, I don't see how anybody could call that a plan. I don't understand how we didn't get some involvement of our community. And as I say, our homeowners association is still waiting for a meeting with Ms. Gordon from last year. And, we haven't had it yet. There's been no response to our connection and our request. And the idea that this can happen in the city of Buffalo, where the Common Council stays on top of what is being developed neighborhood by neighborhood and district by district, is really pretty amazing. I mean, there's got to be a better way for us to do this.
Yeah, I think having this item, as the chair has said, we'll keep this item in committee, and we have some talking points to look at what we can do to fine tune this, because I agree with you. If it goes to Benlick and we hand it off to someone and they don't have to abide by those agreements, then I think we're missing the boat. And I think there should be possibly some council member involvement so that we are aware of what's going on in our districts. But that's something that we have to develop as we continue to have talking points. But at least we have it with the law department. They can look at what they can do in this particular situation, and then we can go from there, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Okay, motion to table. Motion to table, seconded by Councilmember Birlow.
Item number 3, letter about City of Buffalo rental registration.
Motion to table.
Okay, motion to table, seconded by Councilmember Scanlon.
Item number 4, neighborhood concerns.
Items open.
Okay, this is a letter that I received from in my district from Mr. Henry and the Judges Row Block Club regarding speed humps, and I know Mr. Henry is on, and I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My name is Howard Henry. I live at 168 Huntley Road in the Judges Row Block Club. And 2 years back, we had some temporary speed humps put onto Tree Haven and to Huntley Road and onto Burke Road to slow down traffic, which transits through our neighborhood to try to avoid the intersection of Eggert and Kensington. Tree Haven is a cross-town east-west route for people from the eastern suburbs who come up Century, make a left turn onto Tree Haven, and then speed down Tree Haven, crossing Eggert, turning into Winspear, getting to the center of the city. The other way that folks from our eastern suburb access the center of the city is to come down Kensington to my road, Huntley, make a right turn to avoid the intersection at Kensington and Eggert, speed up Huntley, make the left turn onto Tree Haven, and then take off again. People heading south on Eggert, in order to avoid the Kensington-Eggert intersection, make a left turn onto Eldon Road, come to Huntley, make a right turn, go down Huntley to Kensington. Other people go down Eggert to Burke, make a left turn onto Burke, speed up Burke, make a right turn on Huntley down to Kensington. The temporary speed humps that we had in effect a couple years back really slowed traffic down. We had 2 of them on Tree Haven, 2 on Huntley, 1 on Burke. I am a retired person. Many folks in our neighborhood are retired people. We don't move as fast as we used to. We do not appreciate having to dodge cars. We're not playing dodge them here. We got some kids in the neighborhood, so there really needs to be something done about traffic calming for our neighborhood. Folks should not be using Huntley as a speed through. They should not be using Burke. They should not be using Eldon. They should not be using Tree Haven. I understand from the Councilmember Wyatt, that he did put money into his budget for installation of speed humps on our streets. So we are grateful for his action and his activity in that respect. We don't understand why the speed humps have not been put in. And we want to, just as Mr. Reese wants to preserve his neighborhood, we want to preserve ours as well. We really need some effective traffic calming, especially on Tree Haven, especially on Huntley, especially on Burke, especially on Eldon. And people do not observe the stop signs. People just speed right through. And that's because they don't live here, but we do. And so what we need to have is action in traffic calming that is effective, whether it's speed humps or something else. We need to slow the traffic down. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I know, Mr. Chief of Staff, were there other people that wanted to speak on this? I think, I thought there were others. If not, we can
Yes,
move on.
yes, sir. There are several people on the call. However, I can't identify them from their phone numbers as they've called in.
Okay. If you wanted to speak, how do we get them identified? Because I don't want to just open it up to everybody.
At this point, sir, we would have to do that and wait for somebody to identify themselves.
Okay. If you got a second, if you want to speak, unmute yourself on this regarding speed humps.
While we're waiting, let me add that I am the chaplain of the Judges Row Block Club, and I'm speaking not just for myself, but I'm also speaking for members, other members who live on Huntley, other members who live on Tree Haven, other members who live on Burke, other members who live on Eldon, all of whom have communicated directly with the councilman.
Thank you. And well, Mr. Finn, we've had some general conversation, and I'm thankful that he's able to break away from his meeting and come to speak regarding this item. Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you. And perhaps some of what I'll say will answer questions that others may have. So thank you, sir, for bringing your question to the table. I'll first specifically speak about Judges Row and then overall about the Slow Streets program. I did have a conversation with Mr. Blackman, the Judges Row. I believe he's the president of the Judges Row Block Club.
No,
Former
sir.
president.
Former. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Former president.
Okay. Well, I'll just say I had a conversation with Mr. Blackman, and we discussed the potential of changing part of Burke Drive to one-way, and he was going to take that and look at giving a petition to the individuals who may be affected. So that's one part of the conversation. And overall with speed humps, certainly we have gotten, and I know the council members have gotten questions about, oh, what happened? We thought we were going to do them this year. The contractor who received the low bid for the work is frankly in violation of their contract and not doing work for us right now. They're off. I found them. They're out in Tonawanda doing work on Sheridan Drive by my parents' house. So I'm going to be working over the winter to enforce our contract rights because, as I've said to some other council members and residents, that frankly isn't fair. And it's not acceptable to the Department of Public Works. When you accept a contract from us, we expect you to work at it diligently, get the work done, and deliver for our residents the same way that all of us, the department, the council members, the mayor, are expected to deliver. So we'll be taking care of that from an enforcement standpoint and get a contractor who will get that work done. Unfortunately, given where we're at in the fall, that's something that's going to have to be done next spring. But at this point, I'm just looking at doubling up on the work that gets done next construction season with a contractor who's able to do it and responsive. So that's specifically on construction. I also wanted to speak on the overall Slow Streets program. We had 58 total applications citywide. With the funding that we're looking at, there's a specific citywide pot, and then there's obviously Councilmember White. I know you allocated funding specifically for university. We're only able to get to 3 of them based on our estimates. The total cost for the whole program would be close to $5 million. So that just kind of gives an idea. I realize that this year, this is the first year we're taking a look at it. I don't think any of us knew what to expect, but it's something I think that we all need to work at going forward because clearly there's a desire from the neighborhoods for this to be done. I think I'll conclude with that. And if there's any follow-up that anyone wants to ask, I'm happy to answer questions.
I want to say thank you for talking with Tony Blackman and thank you for the efforts. Since Tony was the president of the Block Club, would it be helpful to you if the current president was to contact you or some officer, official officer letter from the Block Club?
Certainly, yeah. That's I'm happy to work with whomever is representing the community and can help all of us work towards this initiative.
Okay, I will take that to our officers meeting then, and we will communicate directly with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Do we have anybody else on the line that wanted to speak regarding this item? You have to unmute your phone. Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Did you have?
So my apologies, sir. I was just saying that I think that several members might have dropped off the call considering our delay from legislation.
Okay. Did any colleagues have any questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Finn. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Motion to table.
Motion to table.
Seconded by Councilmember Rivera.
Item number 5, concerning bail reform.
Motion to table items 5, 6, and 7.
Seconded by Councilmember Scanlon.
Item number 8, public hearing, rename Columbus Park as Prospect Park.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing, seconded by Councilmembers Rivera. Anyone to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello, Ms. Crockett.
Is it all right if I speak?
You sure can. Okay,
wonderful. Well, on behalf of the Conservancy and its Board of Trustees, just wanted to thank the Common Council for this public input opportunity. The Conservancy, as you know, is a public-private partner with the city. We're grateful to have support for our mission and our management work. And the Conservancy is 100% supportive of renaming Columbus Park back to its original name of Prospect Park. We thank Councilmember Rivera, the many longtime Prospect Hill Park neighbors, and the Federation of Italian Americans for requesting this renaming. As the nonprofit that's charged with advocacy for the historical integrity of Buffalo's nationally acclaimed park system. We appreciate the history of how times can change. And decades ago, the park was renamed Columbus due to the Columbus statue being in the park. And now that the statue is removed, it is fitting and appropriate to return the park to its original Prospect name. And so, again, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity. We full endorse the recommendation. We thank the community, the city, and we encourage Common Council to approve the action. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another speaker, Mr. Caruso.
Yes.
You have
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Mr. Caruso, you got the floor.
All right, hold on a second. How about now?
You're good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the time to speak, and I will be very brief. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Frank Caruso, and although Stephanie knows me now, I'm the chairman of the board of directors of the Federation of Italian American Societies of Western New York, which is an umbrella group comprised of 30 different Italian American organizations around Western New York. We're also affiliated with Italian American cultural organizations across New York State, as well as around the country. And as Stephanie brought up, in 1973, the statue was moved to Prospect Park and the park rededicated to Columbus Park, again in 1973, to honor and recognize the early struggles faced by Italian immigrants to the United States and the city of Buffalo in particular. And our federation has maintained its preference over the years for the name Columbus Park, but we also recognize our changing world and community. In that vein, we met with members of the Prospect Hill Homeowners Association, those are the residents near and around Columbus Park, Councilman David Rivera, who soon will be named as an honorary Italian, I think, because he grew up in it and knew more than we did about some of the things going on. Councilman Joel Faraletto, the Olmsted Conservancy, who were very kind, and the Arts Council for the city of Buffalo, and Mayor Byron Brown, who has been wonderful to us. And it was the general consensus among all the parties involved, including our federation, that the park was to be, if the park was to be renamed, that it would revert to its original designation of Prospect Park. And for our Italian culture, for over 110 years, the west side of Buffalo was known as Little Italy, and Prospect Park was its gateway and central gathering place. For generations, there have been many warm memories of Italian-American events and family get-togethers in that park. Today, the West Side community is comprised of a wonderfully interwoven mosaic of rich and varied cultures and traditions. And it is only fitting that we believe the rich and welcoming history of the name Prospect Park will now be the focal point of unity for this beautiful neighborhood and the city of Buffalo as a whole. So I thank you very much for giving me the time.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. We have one last speaker, Mr. Cody.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Tom Cody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. I reside at 654 Columbus Parkway, across from what is now Columbus Park. I've been here in the neighborhood for about 27 years, as many of the Columbus Park, Peace Bridge neighborhoods have lived there for many, many years. Like many of the other residents, I've lived in the neighborhood for quite a while, and we use the park on a daily basis for walking, reading, exercising, and relaxing. We were disappointed to see that the statue came down, but certainly understand the political nature and what's going on. We respect the decision by the Italian American Association in the city, and we look forward to the new sculpture, which will be placed there sometime in the future. The neighborhood, as Mr. Caruso mentioned, the neighborhood residents, along with Councilmember Rivera, members of the Italian American Federation and the Olmsted Conservancy, met shortly after the statue was removed, and we discussed what would become of the park name, given that the statue is now gone. And as many of you know, this area has been referred to as Prospect Hill since the 1850s, and one of the oldest and neighborhoods in the city. And we agreed, the residents, the Italian American Federation representative, the Olmsted Conservancy, that resurrecting the park's original name of Prospect Park would be non-controversial and would honor the history, integrity, and diversity of the historic neighborhood. So again, on behalf of the residents in our community, we endorse the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cody. We have one last speaker that was sent to me, Chief of Staff, Mr. Masha. Mr. Masha, you're muted right now. You're muted. Okay, I don't think we can get him, but I see the number, but he's not speaking.
He is connected. Mr. Masha, if you want to hit *6, that should take you off.
Okay, let me go to Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me thank and commend the Federation of Italian American Society for making what I thought was a very difficult decision. I couldn't imagine how difficult it was. But the fact that you consider how it impacted other people, especially the indigenous people, I commend you for that. I also want to thank Stephanie Crockett, who has taken wonderful care of our parks, including both parks that are adjacent. These parks are some of the oldest public spaces in the city of Buffalo. I want to thank as well the administration, Mayor Byron Brown, for bringing this all together along with Councilmember Farrelletto. As Judge, is it Judge? Honorable Judge Frank Caruso mentioned, I'm sorry I didn't call you Judge.
No, that's all right. I didn't call myself Judge.
No, that's okay, but I recognize that you're a judge. As you have mentioned, the society came together, did community engagement. They reached out to the community, including Prospect Hill, Mr. Tom Cody and Carol Perla and Liz Martino and Betsy Murphy and all the folks in that neighborhood who really care about the park and the history in that park. And certainly to be able to go back and rename the park Prospect Hill, the original name, I think is great. I am so happy to see that you're going to put a monument in that park dedicated to Italian Americans and the family. And I'm looking forward to seeing the monument that you're going to put there to recognize, you know, all of the families that came from Western Europe, landed here in Buffalo somehow, and migrated throughout the county. So I want to thank you for all that you've done, and the Conservancy and everybody that was involved. And I'm looking forward to dedicating that monument along with you guys, with all of you when you're ready for that. So thank you. The motion is to close the public hearing.
Well, we have one more person to speak, council member, if we can give them a moment. Corporation Counsel McDuffie.
Sure. Thank you very much. I will be very brief. Of course, I appreciate all the comments that I've heard today, and I echo many of them. The process of naming, I just want to highlight briefly, is derived and found in Chapter 286 of the Code and Charter, right? And that covers the naming of streets, parks, and public buildings. So if there are certain questions on there, that would be the relevant part of the code that we look to for these inquiries. I think what we wanted to share from Corporation Counsel is, of course, if the council does approve of the request to rename the park, then we would need to have a public hearing as we've had today. And that upon having the public hearing, the council, of course, would make its determination within 30 days of that public hearing. To let everyone know which direction you're going in. And I'm sorry,
so this is the public hearing, correct? This is the public hearing.
Hello? Oh,
Okay.
there appears to be someone else.
Is that Mr. Masha?
There's no.
Yes, I had trouble with my phone. I'm sorry.
Okay, hold on one moment, Mr. Masha. Mr. McDuffie.
No problem. So I had no further comment. As you have noted, council member, this is the public hearing. The determination would need to be made within 30 days of this public hearing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. Okay, Mr. Masha, you're on.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm sorry that I'm not in favor of renaming the park, and I'm going to give the Common Council a chance, hopefully, to table it and do some research on Columbus, which has been maligned through the centuries about his enslaving and murderous attacks on people. But if you would look at a anthropologist, PhD from Boston University, her name is Carol Delaney, and she speaks highly. Actually did 3 years study on Columbus and found out that he should be praised, not demonized. And also another author by the name of Robert Royal. I definitely think that this is, and I'm sure somebody's going to disagree, is this an attack on my culture, the Italian-American community? I feel that there's been many statues that have been vandalized and not removed. To remove Columbus, the park, because a small a segment of the community feels that he did something to malign or disgrace the Italian community, I think is not the real issue here. Now, I'd like to just say one thing. History is not there for you to like or dislike. It is there for you to learn from it, and if it offends you, even better, because then you are less likely to repeat it. It's not yours to erase. It belongs to us all. And I'm surely disappointed about the removal of the statue, that it was done like thieves in the night, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and the Italian community wasn't aware of it. 5 or 10 members of the Italian American Federation decided that it needed to belong in the witness protection program. Well, I'm not in favor of removing the statue, and I'm definitely not in favor of renaming the park Columbus Park. I mean Prospect Park. Columbus Park was named after Christopher Columbus, who the Italian Americans consider a hero, and we still consider him a hero to our community. Any vandalism of other statues, those statues have not been removed. Now, like I said, I think it's just that I'm really upset about this being an attack on our culture, our community, and our history. And to rename the park, I think you should take a second look at it and really study Columbus the way this anthropologist and this author, Robert Royal, did. And maybe you can come to a conclusion that Columbus Park should remain Columbus Park, and in fact, the statue be brought back to Columbus. Now, hopefully, the Common Council would look in favorably of tabling it and doing their own research before they change the name of the park, excuse me. So I'm looking forward to actually having the Common Council do their own research on Columbus and actually the Columbus statue brought back and Columbus Parkway remain Columbus Parkway. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Masha. Okay, Councilmember Rivera.
I don't know if Rashid McDuffie still on?
Corporation Counsel McDuffie?
Yes, sir, he is still connected.
I am.
We have up to 30 days, so we can actually approve this at our next council meeting.
You have up to 30 days to give a determination. That is correct, Majority Leader.
Okay. Motion to close the public hearing then?
Motion to close the public hearing, seconded by Councilmember Farrelletto.
My motion would be to approve.
Okay, well, is it this item or do we go to the next item, Councilmember? Because we got to move items 9 and 15, I believe.
Okay.
Of course, they did.
Remove items 9 and 15 from the table.
Remove items 9 and 15 from the table.
Seconded by Councilmember Farrelletto.
You do need a motion on number 8, which is the moving item.
That's the moving item?
Yes.
Okay.
So my motion was to approve.
Motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Farrelletto.
Item number 9, notice of intention, request to rename Columbus Park.
Okay, what should we do with this item? This is a
Okay, it says receive and file.
motion to receive and file items 9, 15.
9 and 15, yes. Motion to receive and file, seconded by Councilmember Farrelletto.
if there's nothing further to discuss, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Councilmember Farrelletto. Thank you.